Hello, Froggy here, and today we'll be breaking the box in Warlord's Ruin. You're going to want to have a checkpoint that's after first boss, but before second. I'd recommend starting from a post-jail checkpoint. You're probably going to want to come equipped for grapple flying, but that isn't strictly speaking necessary considering some of the things we found underneath the map. But anyways, to do this IRB, we're going to want to skip a checkpoint so we can use it for the autorez later. The easiest way to do that is to simply die after you hit the windswept crag load. Of course, you're going to want to have someone else in the zone with you so that you don't wipe. Then you just have to enjoy the 45-second respawn timer. First time we did this, I thought we were going to have to use fallback points. But turns out the default is all the way up here, which is rather convenient. We tried many things to get an IRB working here. It took us an entire 3 days, which is quite long, especially considering how quickly we got death to loads. But it turned out anything we tried to do in an active zone would not work. I would recommend setting your IRB point over here. And if you didn't set any spawn points, you can respawn back up top, which is quite convenient because you can see that the door to the left is closed and the boss isn't present since we skipped that checkpoint, and otherwise you would probably have to grapple fly back up here. And now we're doing the skip I showed in my previous video. It's not too high pressure since even if you die, you've got an ally alive here with you.
Guardian down.
Or at least I did. Think Elite is just skipping ahead the same way that I just did, because if you do that, you can skip having to go through the entire maze section, and it's much easier to get the autorez. Just gotta go out and yeah, should have been going to the left here. Oh well. If you start your flight from high up, you don't need to use any sort of grapple here, but I have this rather nice hammer, and all these jumps are looking a bit like nails. I'm just going to go and try to die to the Blighted Keep load. It is right up here. Luckily it is very retryable because this one can be a bit annoying. Going to want to drop down and kind of hit it from an unusual direction. You can see that didn't work, but it isn't too bad to get back into King's Bane Rampart. Just got to jump up here, and I would recommend dropping into the load because that tends to result in dying less often. Though if you get that death to load, you just have to do the same jump we did earlier. If you end up stuck inside the map in Blighted Keep, you can get back out the way I showed in my previous video, although it might just be easier to wipe. Anyways, let's get that death to load. I use that little bit of visible terrain as a landmark. You want to kind of put it in the middle of the wall, then line your cursor up a bit to the right and slowly walk forwards. And if all goes well, your ghost will be out here. And now it's time to trigger the autorez. You're going to want to have your second player go back to where you would have exited from the labyrinth if you had run that normally. Right about when you get inside, you'll trigger the autorez. I didn't get an update here because I'm doing it from the second boss, but you should see something like this. And now we're out of the box. You don't want to head in that direction because that is where the regular map would be, and you may find yourself inside the box pull. But anything in this direction is safe. I didn't get much sword ammo before coming out here, so I'm going to generate a little bit. Want to have your ammo max low when alive, and then high when dead. And that'll slowly gain ammo. Looks like Elite's about to join us. As is usually the case with IRBs, you can get your entire fighter team out here. They just need to do the same steps you did. But you don't need to use an autorez because you'll be out to res the ghost. And with that taken care of, we are free to move about the mountain. Earlier, we had been trying to IRB inside of Kingsbane Rampart, around where the jail encounter was. Which should be right around here. Unfortunately, that didn't work, because it turns out that everything over here was either a death barrier or within the box pull, which wasn't very convenient. Looks like that might be solid. It's always a guessing game when you're out of box to see what things will and won't be solid. Though it's looking pretty good so far. Generally, these sort of brick structures are solid when you see them out of box, since they're kind of leftover assets. Glad I didn't have to use my grapple there. Let's see if we can make our way back towards first encounter. We also tried IRBing out there, which required doing first boss as part of the route, so I'm glad we didn't end up having to do that. But things did seem kind of weird out there, so I'm curious to see what it's like. It looks like we've got some ricochets, and... wait, what? Well, this is solid. But the ground is not. And the walls aren't, but the walls are ricocheting, so I guess that's just telling us lies. You can't always trust ricochet rounds, but it's generally a good thing to use for a first guess. But nothing tests walls quite like throwing a guardian at them. Yeah, it's just like random parts of this are solid. Really strange. I am at a bit of a loss. But yeah, it seems like some mountain is solid, some is not, and ricochet rounds are random as to whether they're going to tell you or not. Yeah, I'd really been trying to use this as a target, so I guess that explains the weirdness that we saw when we attempted it. We just saw our ghost briefly show up on some very low poly mountain stuff. Huh. The grapple seems to... wait a minute. We even get sword clinks. It blocks grapple points and makes a sword clink sound. Weird. Well, I guess that's the low res mountain that we were seeing when trying to IRB, so that explains that. Huh. I guess we've got kind of big mountains under the map. Huh. Well, let's go check some more mountains. There are a whole lot of them around here, and who knows how many of them are solid. I don't see any reason for the one in front of us to be, since you would never stand anywhere near it, since we teleport all past this when doing the dungeon. But looks like we've lucked out. We've got solid mountains. This might even be solid all the way over to the next area. Wild. A bit narrow for trying to traverse. But not really more narrow than you might see in other mountains. And I thought the beginning of this dungeon that you climb around mountains a whole bunch. There aren't too many places where we get giant traversable mountains out of box. There's a pretty big one you can find in the EDZ around, what is it, Volunder? Man, the views you get out here are really something. You can see all the way from the end to the beginning. Or at least first boss. Well, let's check the next mountain. Well, with this solid, I'm pretty sure it's solid all the way. Those kind of look like they're beyond true edge, so probably not. Well, let's go check this one. And wait, what? Well, these are solid. Gonna have to see where this goes. Seems like it could be quite lengthy. And I thought those other mountains were big. Wonder how far this goes. And these just keep going. I'm going to throw up the unedited footage of this so that you can see more of the true extent of these mountains, because they really are tremendous. Whenever you think you might be at the end of them, you find that you're just below another intangible sheet. It looks like it stretches all the way to underneath the boss area. Crazy. They can get a bit steep in places, so I would definitely recommend some grapples to help traverse, or maybe stasis climbing, but grapple is just so much faster these days. Alright, I'm gonna let myself get distracted by this mountain over here. It'd be really wild if this is solid too. And looks like it is not. But I'm glad I came over to check. Let's get a look from above. It's just so nice looking around here. Could imagine skiing down some of these slopes. Pretty much all intangible, but might as well check a few more in case there are any surprises. And a little bit higher. Oh, looks like that was a bit too high. Well, I guess we're back in solid mountain land. Or they're not solid. And up there's probably kill barrier because of the box. So let's head in this direction. It is truly impressive how far this runs. Stretches up pretty tall too. Long story short, I was able to climb all the way up here where it looks like we might be joining back up with the mountains we stood on before. which means they are way bigger than I initially thought. Wow. I think at this point I can comfortably say that these are the largest solid mountains in the game. If you have any counterexamples, I would love to see them. Well, ever since my first run, I wanted to climb that tower to the right, and now that we're out of box, we can. So let's head on over to there. In my first run through of the dungeon, looking up at this tower, I noticed a missing texture we could kind of look in. Looks like we've got giant cracks we can look down on from here, but not quite the sort we can drop through, so getting inside here will take a little bit more work. Maybe there'll be a hole up here where we can't normally get. Or perhaps there'll be no solid ground at all. That was a bit easier than I was expecting. Should be able to just grapple right up top. Stuff solid? Well, might as well find out. Well, given that we came up through it, probably not, but this has to be, right? Yeah. Of course, that's activated my cooldown, so let's see how much of this we can climb without grapple flying. Maybe a little bit of grappling. Well, it actually seems we're at an impasse now, so let's get that grenade back. Just a few more navigator grapples should do the trick. Or maybe one. And we're right below the floor we were at before. Can almost jump through. Alas. Well, it is satisfying to finally get inside this thing. Just frustrating that you can't quite get through these holes. Wouldn't be surprised if there's some small stretch that you can. But I'll leave that as an exercise for someone else if they want to. Back on the slopes, it looks like there's a trail of debris I missed, leading all the way up to where the first boss would be. Which means that there very well could be a solid trail of ground going all the way from first boss to second boss, which, if the pesky box weren't in the way, you could probably traverse. It would take a lot longer than that teleport would though, so probably better that we get wished there. But yeah, this really does go all the way back up to the top. Crazy. Like, it is just ridiculous how far these mountains go. I was going to end the video around here, but oh, forgot that's not solid. I just have to know how far these mountains stretch. The view here is pretty nice. And it kind of looks like underneath us might be those solid sort of mountains. And yep, sure enough they are. I cut the recording for a while and just flew around. There were several times when I thought I had reached the end of the mountains, but it turns out there was just another sheet above. I'm hoping that there might be somewhere where the mountains extend all the way to True Edge, because there's some things we want to test around solid ground and true edge, which would potentially be interesting. Doing a bit of grapple flying just because I've been faked out by the end of the mountain several times by now. Oof, a misfire. Guess that's as high up as we go. But at least we know once we hit true edge that we weren't going to be standing on anything further than that. And there we have it. Looks like the end of the line. Just one more check for ricochet rounds up top. But I don't think we'll see any in this direction. As a last act before we left, we climbed the local mountain. Occasionally there were strange regions of higher resolution textures. And sometimes they kind of look like mountains on the mountains, which is kind of weird. A neat illusion there. No idea why this would be the case. But anyways, we made it up to the top. Although, not sure where the top of this is relative to the various other peaks. Anyways, I hope you find the time to come out here, because it is truly crazy how large this mountain range is. It stretches much further than the playable space in pretty much every direction. I have not even seen a small fraction of the mountains out here. I doubt there's much hiding in them, but can't really rule that out. Anyways, happy exploring.